Hey, Taylor Ellwood here. Taylor Ellwood here, and welcome to the Magical Experiments Podcast Live. Today, I'm going to be talking about 3 don'ts when you are creating magical entities. And I think these are important things to keep in mind as we develop our magical entities because it can make the difference between a successful magical entity and one that's not really performing the way you expect it to. So let's get into it. And along the way, I'm going to also share about something special coming up here very soon that's going to be live starting January 26th. So our first don't when it comes to creating magical entities is don't ever just use your voice for a magical entity. When I was creating magical entities I still create magical entities, but I was going through a period of experimentation with magical entities, and I developed a couple of magical entities where what I wanted to do is I wanted to house them in my voice. And what I didn't realize, and this was a good lesson for me, is that housing them in my voice wasn't necessarily a good idea, because if I didn't remember the specific word, I couldn't really activate the entities. There was no way to actually set that up. So this was a good lesson for me because I ended up creating a couple magical entities, and to this day I couldn't even tell you which of those what those magical entities were or what their purpose was, because I also got rid of the notes. This was in the early days when I didn't always keep very good journals around the entity development. And so by housing them in my voice, I essentially set it up so that I couldn't really, if I didn't actively remember or say their names each day, I wasn't going to remember it. And so that's a good example of something not to do when you're developing a magical entity, because at that point, you're limiting the scope of what that magical or of your access to that magical entity. You can still have a name for the magical entity. I mean, I do. I have names for all of them, and I definitely use the names. But I think it's really worthwhile to keep it in mind. The second don't, actually related to the first one, is really comes right down to remember to journal about your entities. Don't create them and not have a record, basically. If you don't have a record of your magical workings in general, it's hard to track how the efficacy or the benefits of what you've created. And this is doubly true with magical entities, because when we're creating magical entities, we're creating semi-autonomous beings that are going to be performing specific tasks and functions. If we don't know what those are and we don't have a record of them, it makes it really hard to objectively evaluate if those entities are actually doing the work they're supposed to be doing, or if there's things that we need to be fixing or changing. So one of the things that I would really recommend doing is looking at, what you can do to create a magical entity where you are keeping track of all the details, all the records, and you have a good sense of things. Now, before I get into the last don't for magical entities, I did want to mention that I have a live challenge that I'm doing with my magical partner, Sheena, starting on January 26th, called Entity Craft. And Entity Craft is going to be this very fun, exciting challenge where we're going to be working on experimenting and innovating with how we create magical entities. So it's starting on January 26th. It's going to be a live challenge. We're going to have 14 videos, 14 emails. You're also going to get live Telegram support, and it's going to be a fun way to connect and engage with the community. Whenever I do these magical challenges, we end up having a lot of fun because of the way that we connect and collaborate, and that in and of itself can be bring a lot of joy. So the final don't and I think this is a really important one, is don't create your entity without having a very specific result and outcome in mind. Like, don't make a broad-based entity. One of the things I've noticed is that some people will create entities that are very broad-based, and the result of creating such a broad-based entity is that it ends up lacking the kind of specificity that you want and need to have in your magical workings. And I think a lot of times this is what trips people up when it comes to working with entities, but also just magic in general. When we have an overly broad result or an overly broad um, spell or something like that, that lack of specificity actually defeats the magic because it doesn't provide a direction for it to go in. And a lot of times that's what we really need. We need a direction for it to go in. And so it's really important to build some sense of boundaries and limitations into the work that you're doing. So that would be the third don't that I have to share with you. Again, if you guys are interested, come check out the Entity Craft Challenge. There is a link below in the show notes, and it's going to be starting on January 26th. I'm super excited about it, and I can't wait to see some of you there.